Okay, break it up, guys. Break it up.
Here.
Howdy, folks. We're back after a respite. I was up in Niagara Falls, which, by the way, I have to say, I've lived 45 minutes away from what people consider the eighth wonder of the world, and I visited the falls 3 times. I did last year. I did friends from out of town came in and we did what's called the Cave of the Winds, which is like it's like a wooden sort of not ladder structure, but stair structure right near the falls. I think it's the American Falls, and you have to like wear like a big raincoat.
Yeah, I did that too. It's
change
fun.
into flip. Now this is the thing. You have to. They say leave your shoes, like at the entrance. And then they give you a pair of flip-flops. And you have to wear the flip-flops on this, because apparently, they I guess they think the flip-flops are better traction than sneaker. All I can say is I almost tripped and fell 5 times because of the goddamn flip-flops. I would have been better off keeping the friggin' sneakers. But anyway. All right, Russ, start us off with the pre-show.
Well, this is going to be an all Buffalo pre-show. So yesterday they debuted the new season of MasterChef, and they're doing the Northeast. And what's interesting is in the promo for it at the beginning, they're interviewing a lot of different people, and they're all talking about the Northeast and how they own Italian food. And yet there was almost no Italian food representing the actual cooks that made it onto the video. But one of them, the first one, was Carla Pisano, and she apparently is a newscaster from like Missouri and Baton Rouge, but she's from Western New York. So she got the crowd going with the Let's Go Buffalo chant. And she was booted. She was the first one booted. She didn't get an apron. Now, the interesting part is, again, her dish is, and it would have been good because, again, it was partially Italian. It was manigot with crawfish and shrimp. And she replaced the manigot. And she put crepes in instead. And it's like, and they didn't love the crawfish either. But I'm like, stick with the Italian stuff. That is what the Northeast is. There is no better Italian food anywhere in the United States. Now, you're always going to find pockets. Don't get me wrong. There's good Italian everywhere. But what I always say about the Northeast is, like, I could go to 3 different places near my house, and they all have excellent Italian food. Like, if I just am dying for a chicken parm sandwich, no problem. I got 3-4 places easy to choose from. And that's what the Northeast is like, where if you're in Houston, Texas, you may have one.
No, I'm not. This is not a criticism of Russ, but I'm from a through and through Italian family. Have Sicilian on one side, Calabrese on the other. We've never pronounced it manigot. It's all like it's like manicotti is the other way, and which is the American version of it. We've never pronounced it manigot. But anyway, so but the thing is, like, even in towns like Buffalo, where there's a heavy Italian population, it's very hit or miss when it comes to like Italian food and Italian restaurants. I can tell you right now, the most popular Italian restaurant in Buffalo, I won't say the name because I don't want to get sued. Their food is crap. I think it's terrible. But I'm Italian, so I'm sort of like I have a higher level of snobbery when it comes to Italian restaurants.
Yeah, I found I've been to Italy a couple of times and spent a total of probably 50 days there in my life. And one thing I've noted is, and I like Italian food, it's not food from Italy when you're there is completely different than the Italian food we have here.
Because isn't that like mostly northern Italian food that they have there?
Yeah, but I've been to both northern and southern Italy, so I've had both kinds. But I have found, like, for example, bolognese sauce. When I'm in Italy, I don't enjoy it. It's the taste of it is, I like kind of the Americanized version of it, and only because that's what I grew up eating. And just the way they eat, like pasta there. I remember I had a 7-course meal, at an Italian restaurant, and they gave you the spaghetti, but it was just a little tiny plate. Like
I don't like it when they give you just that little fan.
Yeah, 7. Well, we had 7 different courses, but they're all real small.
Right.
And I never once had a Italian meal where you were served as much spaghetti as we would serve at a an Italian restaurant. So, but I do like Italian food.
I do want to challenge Mike. I'll give you the manigot, but although, like I said, I was in a Jewish Italian neighborhood. That's how they all pronounced it. But
I don't know. I mean, that is the Italian.
Oh, okay.
Pronunciation. I'm just saying that throughout my life, even though my family's Italian, we pronounced it manicotti.
Okay. What drives me crazy though on TV and in real life is when they say mozzarella when it's mozzarella,
mozzarella or mozzarella.
Don't say mozzarella. That's like Olive Garden.
Please, everything is anglicized or Americanized.
Horrible. I hate that.
But Kevin, to your point, a friend of mine just came back from 10 days in Italy, and so now her and her husband, they didn't complain about the portions because, like, unlike me, like they were satisfied with them. Me, I want a meal that fills me. But they said the quality of the food, like the vegetables were much more, the salads were better, the caprese.
For sure.
Everything luscious.
Yeah, farm to table is a thing in Italy as well. I mean, that's true. And the Italian, I guess what I would say is Italian is less pasta than you think it is.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's.
But there was, Russ, there was an Italian.
From the Orient, technically, right? It came from
originally,
Marco came from the Orient.
Marco Polo brought spaghetti.
Marco Polo brought it, and then it eventually got here. So maybe we did Americanize that too. It was just the easiest thing to cook Italian-wise. Maybe that's why.
But here's and sometimes too much is too much. And there was an Italian place that recently closed in our area, and a lot of people would go to this place, and you would order, say, fettuccine Alfredo. They would give you, if it was takeout or if it was there, you were basically getting an entire box of pasta. I mean, like a 16-ounce box of pasta. It was enough for like 3 meals. That's overkill. I mean, I don't need that much. I don't need to be eating that for leftovers for the next, Just one other thing, Russ. The Gary Sanchez experiment apparently has failed.
It's over. Yes, the Mets DFA'd him. What was the point? I think the point was he was out there. They threw him in Syracuse after. This is a bad rule in baseball. A bad rule. Because they threw him in there on a tryout basis, it's 8 days and that's it. And then after those 8 days, you have to either sign and become a major leaguer or you're back to being a free agent. So they were like, all right, fine, we'll sign him. They played him in 2 games and they saw he can't catch and he now no longer has a power swing. He actually has cut down on his swing. So then they were like, all right, no thanks, we're not interested. But I didn't understand the whole flirtation in the first place.
Well, any fantasy baseball team that picked him up was just.
We're totally desperate, folks. That's why we picked him up.
Yes. Here's the last thing. Here is the statement of how quality our fantasy baseball team is. We're in last place. Second last is 600 points ahead of us. Hello, Hockey World. Today is Friday, May 26th, 2023.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
Kevin Allen, and I'm not that much farther ahead of them. So,
and I'm John McGraw. This is the Hockey Buzzcast here on HockeyBuzz.com. Okay, let's start with Game 4 last night. We did not have a clean sweep in both the East and the West, and I'm sure some people are thankful. I'm sure the television executives at TNT or ESPN are thankful of that because there would have been a large gap between Game 4 and the start of the Stanley Cup playoffs, and we don't know when it's going to start. It's either going to be, I think, next Wednesday or next Saturday, depending on whether this series gets extended. But the Dallas Stars got off the mat, 3-2 overtime victory over the Vegas Golden Knights on a Joe Pavelski power play goal. Series goes back to Vegas. I saw that goal. I was at a concert last night, so I saw the last 5 or 6 minutes of the third period and the overtime. I was tracking the game. Russ, we all think I picked Dallas to win the series, so I'm a little surprised that Vegas was up 3-0. But I thought they were a pretty even team, so them staying alive and maybe even getting back into the series is not a surprise. But without Ben and without Dadonov, that would be a surprise if they continue this.
Yeah, I don't know if Dadonov's that big of a loss. Ben's a loss, but the interesting thing is, it's like anything else. If you lose your captain, it can be a situation where the team rallies and says, okay, look, now we've got to do this for the captain, right? Do it for the Gipper, whatever you want to say. And it does seem like Jason Robertson played that way, because it wasn't just offensively, it was defensively too. He was all over the ice. He was pushing people off the puck. It was his best game. And he had the proper desperation, and so did the team. Rupe Hintz, again, we probably never talk about him enough, but we mention him. And another great game out of Rupe Hintz. And this was a game where, Ottinger was locked in. Sure, in these playoffs, nobody is impenetrable. Bob's got the only shutout, right? I don't know if there was another shutout. Maybe there was one other. I'm not sure. I don't remember. But there's nobody that's not impenetrable. And Ottinger really looked good, even under tough circumstances late in the game. Once it went to overtime, I actually felt pretty good for Dallas, and then the penalty happened, and that was a legit penalty. I know there was talk about the penalty in the other game that maybe you didn't like it with Tkachuk and everything else, and he got the game-winning goal. This one was more definite and could have almost been 4 minutes. It was 2 minutes, and Dallas took advantage. That Pavelski goal definitely did something for them because he was struggling, or at least wasn't hot, and yeah, I think Dallas can win another game or two for sure. Like I'm not counting them out yet. I know the odds are against them. We've only seen, I covered the Flyers when they did it against the Bruins, and Vegas is really good. But again, this is still Adin Hill. And while he is doing really, really well, is he going to continue to do really well? I still am going to question it until he moves on.
Kev, like I said, I picked Dallas in the series, and like I said, I was a little surprised that with Adin Hill that Vegas has been able to carve out a 3-0 lead. But I give Vegas credit. I mean, Eichel is playing fantastic. Their defense is really good. Hill has been up to the task. He played good last night. It wasn't the loss wasn't on him. No. I think the thing that's been the most surprising here is the inconsistent play of Ottinger, when I think everybody thought that he was going to be a determining factor in the series. And a lot of people were saying, well, he played 60-plus games during the regular season, and he might be out of gas. I don't know if that's a valid criticism, or, what do you think of what's going on right now?
Well, this is the points I would make. One of the things, the Stars are a fortunate team that when they lose Ben, they still have a guy like Joel Pavelski who provides instant leadership just by the fact that, he's seen so much. And now he's the leading active playoff goal scorer in NHL history, or leading active goal scorer in this season, not in NHL history. But anyway, Pavelski had been a little silent in the last few games, and of course, but he was there when they really needed him. Robertson, of course, people had been talking about that he wasn't the same player that he was in the regular season, but you got to sort of learn how to play through it. And in the last 4 games, now he's got 4 goals, and that's what you expect from him when he plays at that level. And I took Vegas to win it, but if you recall, I said I'm doing it on a hunch because I really like this Dallas team. Like when you look at it, they've got it all. They've got a nice defense led by a premium defenseman in Heiskanen. They've got, just enough scoring to usually to get it done. They've got some premium players as well. So it's not surprising that they wouldn't go gently into the night against the Golden Knights. I wouldn't be shocked if they win one more, but I think it's, we know what I finally saw the actual record for teams that are down 3-0. The team that goes up 3-0 is 21-4 in the last 205 times that's happened. So it's not going to likely this turn out to be a Dallas win, but they rose up and got it done, and made it somewhat of a series. And it's a cliche, but it's always truth. You just kind of take one game. And if you take that, you feel better about yourself. You go in with a little more confidence than you had when you were down 3-0. So I thought it was an impressive win. And Onger needed an act of redemption or contrition or whatever you want to call it, because he was not good in the last game. And the remarkable thing about that is what is he known for? Is his consistency. But part of that consistency is when he has a stinker like he did, he came back and played very well, made 37 saves. But a lot of saves necessary.
On both sides, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and somebody was pointing out in the chat, it's like, I mean, they're one of the players that has been remarkably surprising for Dallas has been Max Domi, because there was not a lot of expectation about Domi when they got him from Chicago at the deadline. It was sort of an oh by the way move. They didn't get Patrick Kane, they didn't get Timo Meyer, and it was looked upon like a fallback plan B type of move. And I think he's their second leading scorer right now, or second or third to Robertson and Hintz. He's been one of their better forwards. Now, again, the odds of Dallas coming back from 3-0 and making this a series are remote. I mean, it's happening right now in the NBA with the Celtics coming back against the Miami Heat. But I think Domi probably, in spite of the slash that he had in Game 3, that was he got penalized $5,000 by the league. He's probably earned himself some money in a couple-year contract.
Right.
Yeah. So
yeah, I mean, he's looked, hasn't he? Russ, hasn't he looked like the player they thought he was going to be when he was drafted?
This is the best that I've seen him. Even earlier in the year, I didn't think he was that good. But, like the goal that he assisted on yesterday, like that's what Domi is always capable of doing. I don't know what's gotten in the way of him not doing that.
Yeah.
Well, I think the motivation is there that he's looking for a new deal, but okay, that sometimes
it's not that though. It's not.
Yeah, I mean, I never buy that. Once you're out there playing, you can't think about that stuff. It doesn't even enter your mind. But like I know the Blackhawks were pleased with him when they had him. So.
And there was talk about Kyle Davidson saying that they wanted to keep him and extend him, and he liked it in Chicago. So maybe he goes back to Chicago because they're going to need players to surround Connor Bedard.
Maybe.
One little thing off the ice that I saw on social media last night. I think it was before the game, and if you're looking for the sign of the apocalypse, in one photo, Ty Domi, Max's dad, Ric Flair, and Mike Tyson. I was like, why was this happening? And is the world going to end?
Obviously, they were paid for an appearance.
Yeah, I would say so.
Like years ago, when Ric Flair, because again, known for being from Charlotte, North Carolina, I interviewed him just before the Cup in 04. Was it 06? Or was it 06 for Carolina? 06?
Yes, 06.
06. I interviewed him just for that, before that. And of course, they used to play as Woo, and that was a big deal. They were the only team that did it. And that got posted up on NHL.com, and it was a big deal. Now everybody does it, and Rick goes anywhere for $1. So and I don't blame him. And so I'm not shocked at that. And Tyson does the same thing.
After years of being underpaid by Vince McMahon, I don't blame him for
He's never underpaid. Let's be fair about something. Ric Flair has made more money than most wrestlers will ever see, but he's also spent more money and had more wives than most wrestlers have ever had.
Right.
Problem with Ric Flair.
So since the last time we were on, the Florida Panthers completed their 4-game sweep of the Carolina Hurricanes. Talk about the game first of all, and okay, I'll just say this: I disagree with some of other media sources out there that believe that Sergei Bobrovsky right now is the runaway candidate for the Conn Smythe if Florida wins. Not to say that he's not playing fantastic, and I think he definitely deserves consideration. But when Matthew Tkachuk scores 3 game-winning goals, 2 in overtime, and 1 with 4.9 seconds left in the conference finals, and I believe he's leading the team in scoring, he's the leading candidate for the Conn Smythe. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and I think he's got he's been involved in 8 of the game-winning goals thus far for the Panthers. Like, it isn't just, and just in this series. So, in fact, one of the things I wrote the other day is there's only like 5 people in the history of the NHL who have more involvement in game-winning goals and their teams run than Tkachuk, and 2 of them are named Gretzky and Lemieux. Like, that's the kind of company he's been in with his level of play. Yeah. So, I mean, I think that would suggest that he's in the race as well. And we don't know that the Panthers are going to win. I think they're playing the best hockey of anyone. When you look at them, they've got their goaltending going. Their defense has been good enough. They've got guys who have raised their game on their defense, particularly Montour, and playing at a high level. And of course, their offense has been good enough. And you got to give Barkov a lot of credit too, because Tkachuk's kind of come in and taken over the team in terms of everybody sort of follows his lead now. But Barkov, instead of sulking about it, just seems happy to have Tkachuk and is still doing his thing. I mean, he scored an unbelievably beautiful goal, the other day as well. So, I think the Panthers have got it going. Like, regardless of who comes out, I mean, I could change my mind, but I'm going to probably pick the Panthers to win it just because I think they're playing so well. I mean, I just really like how they're playing, and I think everybody watches them. Like, I saw somebody, I don't remember which player it was, just saying, like, we feel like we're going to win every game. Well, they look like they feel like they're going to win. Like, when you're watching them play, they're just playing with such a high degree of confidence. So it's going to be
since falling behind 3-1 to Boston, they've won 11 of the last 12 games. The only team to beat them was Toronto in that game 4. And Russ, I mean, the thing is that Tkachuk is not only beating people in terms of on the scoreboard, scoring game-winning goals, he's messing with other teams psychologically. So it's sort of a dual situation here. Now, Bobrovsky has been great. No, don't get me wrong, but I don't think they're winning these series if Tkachuk is not being the player that he is.
Yeah, but they wouldn't be winning it without Bobrovsky being.
Oh no, definitely. Yeah. Maybe it's a co-Conn Smythe.
So a couple things. So at some point after the Boston series, I got the feeling that Florida kind of looked like that faux team that the Sixers were when Moses Malone basically said that's how they sort of ran through the playoffs after that. They sort of had that look. But I do think there's a conundrum here because I was on Team Bob before that last Tkachuk game-winning goal. Now I'm leaning towards Tkachuk. But here's the caveat. So let's say they go in and they lose in 7 to Vegas. And let's say, there's games of like 4-3, 5-4, whatever. And maybe there's a couple of maybe there's one shutout on the Florida side and maybe one other game where Florida only gives up a couple goals. You could vote Bob as the Conn Smythe winner like Ron Hextall. It might get to the point where, we decide at some point as voters, hey, look at what Bob's doing. Maybe he is the one that really has gotten him here and they just ran out of gas, but he didn't. And if he has enough good games in the Stanley Cup, because again, when you look on the Vegas side, there's Eichel for sure. Aiden Hill is a possibility, but there's going to be grumbling if Aiden Hill is getting voted as a Conn Smythe. It could happen. And Pietrangelo, maybe William Karlsson. You generally don't get voted for defense, or Jan Eriksson would have won it back in the day with the Rangers. So, I just think there is an argument for it, Kev, where Bob could still win the Conn Smythe even on the losing side.
Yeah, I mean, it would depend on what the series was and all that stuff. But, it would need to go, like 7 games or 6 or 7 anyway. But, I mean, it's certainly possible. It certainly has happened. There's no doubt.
And Russ, I got it wrong because we were talking about this, Kev. It's right now 4 instances when a player on a losing team won the Conn Smythe. I thought it was 3, and I thought it was only goaltenders. Obviously, what Russ mentioned with Hextall, J.S. Shiger in 2003.
I covered that one. I think Kev did too.
Roger
Yeah.
Crozier in '66 when he was stood on his head against Montreal. But I forgot about Reggie Leach.
Oh yeah,
'76 against the Canadiens. So
yeah.
So
yeah, it could happen. It's interesting though. Like, I want to give the Florida fans credit because even though, again, during the regular season they don't show up that well, they're showing up in the playoffs and they're very loud. And I do give them credit. They're the ones that are there now are really into it. I think Kachuk has changed the marketplace. I do. I think he has, because of his personality, really gotten those fans to latch onto him. Yeah, he's winning the mental battle, but really he is having fun like he's a kid playing hockey, like he is. And not everybody always looks like they're having that much fun, especially when games are tight and the cup is on the line. But he really does have that nature to him, and so like I give him credit for that because it's hard to do that knowing that you're the leader of your team, you're going to be counted on every game. He's coming through, so we don't see this every day.
Yeah, I do think too, and I've said this before. Like the rat thing, they have to let that go.
Yes.
Because it was born organically. Like if it were a marketing trick, then I would not be in favor of it. But this was something that just happened. It was born out of an incident that happened in 1996. The rat slayer, Mellenby, as I recall it was, slayed a rat that was with his hockey stick. And then back then it got out of hand because they were throwing so many
after
every goal, and it would, they were really knee deep, and they were robbing actually the Panthers of their momentum, because it would take so long to clean them up. They would get snow shovels, and it would take them forever. So they can't let it go that far. But any thought? I mean, I've seen people suggest that they got to, start getting on the things for throwing rats, but. Like, I think it's cool that they're doing that. And, you got to let Panthers, I mean, they've had so much trouble attracting fans. You got to let them do what they need to do in order to be,
Yeah, they're allowed to have their fandom. They are. Yeah,
for sure. So I think that's a good thing, too. I did want to bring up, Russ and I talked about it before the show. I'm really disappointed, particularly in the sports writers who have gotten all over Rod Brindamore about his statement. And what I'm bothered by is the hypocrisy about it. You have many conversations when you are a sports writer, when you discuss, boy, I wish we could get coaches and players to be more transparent, be more honest about their feelings, instead of giving us the same cliches. We didn't execute, we didn't get it done. And we had a guy like Rod Brindamore who did that. And in case you missed it, basically what he said was, people are going to look at this and think that, it was a true sweep. And, his point was, now everybody understood what he was saying at that point, but it was too hard for sports writers to ignore the 8 and 9-year-old boy that's within us that says that you got to say, look at the scoreboard. Sports for certainly is result oriented. All that really matters is who wins the game. But when you write about it, if we want to stay in business, especially for those of us who are sports writers, it has to be nuanced. It has to be layered. You have to peel back the onion and look what's inside and do all that. In order to do that, you need someone like Rod Brindamore. And, what I'm bothered about is everybody knew what he was saying. What he was really saying is, look, we were in every game. They were tight games. We could have easily won 1 game or 2 games. And, what also is not brought up when people rip him for suggesting that, well, what are you talking about? Look at the scoreboard. It was a sweep. They won all 4 games. But what they're ripping him for is really because it was easy. It's easy to rip him because, and I just think that's ridiculous. So are we going to criticize him because he didn't do it exactly the way he wanted it to? Come on, let's be real.
So I didn't quote tweet it and say that's what happened because it was easy. There's a thing and this has been since I've at least been 10 or 12, I'd like to get credit for being a 10 or 12-year-old and an 8 or 9-year-old. That's the first thing I'm going to complain about. But what I saw was, well, no, because Kevin said, if you're an 8 or 9-year-old,
Oh,
I'm going to get blamed for something. Make me a 10 or a 12-year-old. But what I didn't like is, and this goes back to when the Rangers lost to the Kings in the Stanley Cup. I kept hearing people write and say this was a close Stanley Cup. And I'm like, what are you talking about? It was 5 games. But those 5 games were so close. And it's like, okay. And like, so I get it, Rod. These games were closer than maybe some other sweeps have been, but it is still a sweep. So my thing is, if you want to tell us how good your team was, then just tell us how good your team is. You don't have to say how close you thought the series was, because in result, it wasn't close. And that's really,
you're just pointing to the scoreboard, Russ. You're just pointing to the scoreboard. That's all you're doing. Yeah, you are. You're being dismissive of the idea that series.
I'm telling you, his players are way out. He's trying to pat them on the back and say, hey, we got swept, but good job, fellas. Don't worry. Have a great summer. And I'm not sure that's the right message, Kev.
Well, let's just say that what Brendan Moore
he has not had great playoff success here. He has gotten to a certain point, and I do think at a point he's going to have to figure it out.
Let's just say that what
let's
just say that what Brindamore said is less egregious than Jamie Benn saying, "Oh, I was just trying to break my fall with my stick on Mark Stone's neck."
Yeah, on his throat. No, of course. It's not even in the same ballpark. Yeah. But I'm just saying there's got to be a point where, again, every year Carolina is looked at as a serious contender, and every year they have a lot of similar problems that keep them from being it. So now this year, hold on, when they get swept, this might be the year you have to look in the mirror and say, why the hell did we get swept?
Why the hell did you get swept? Because in my honest estimation, okay, Svechnikov was not there. Maybe wait, just let me finish. Svechnikov was not there. Teravainen was not there for a while. They lose Pacioretty, who they were depending on to provide offense, and then he got hurt again. They really have not invested. They've invested in their defense. I don't think they've invested tons in their goaltending. They've spent money, but I don't think, maybe Kochetkov is going to be the guy. Really, they have not invested long-term in adding scoring that they think they need. And we have critiqued them in terms of not having enough depth offensively. They've added Kotkaniemi. They signed Aho or they matched the offer sheet. They're missing 1 or 2 pieces. And I don't think Waddell has gone out and gotten that. And I think that that's a valid criticism. And I think they have to pivot, Kev, because they're close. They've got Burns and they've got Stahl. And these are guys in their mid-30s, and they're still effective players. They've got to add 1 or 2 pieces to really take advantage of the team that they have right now to win. And I don't know whether they're going to do that or not.
Well, I don't think we know whether they're going to do it, because I actually agree with that. I mean, they had a team that's close to winning. But, Russ, you're a layered thinker when it comes to sports. So for this simplistic approach, it's really not you. I mean, you always look at things beyond just the scores. And yet you're criticizing Rod Brindamore for doing that, what you do all the time. I mean, because, I all he was saying was, things could have been different had we not lost Svechnikov, if Pacioretty could have been part of the lineup. In their mind, they went out and did all the things they were supposed to do. And then they came in and
going like he has a bad injury history. Like that was a dice roll. We all knew that was a dice roll.
Yeah. But I don't know. My bottom line is this: it's hypocritical if you're going to talk about how you want to get players and coaches to open up, and then you just rip them the minute they.
I don't mind being hypocritical, because I feel like in the end, you've got to look at this Carolina team. Tom Dundon has to look at this Carolina team and say something has to change, because in another year, Slavin's a UFA, and things could start to change for them, and they're not reaching the goal. They're not even getting to where they need to be. And That's what they have to figure out. And they've made the same mistakes the last couple of years in a row, whether it's good luck, bad luck, whatever. Like, that's what they have to figure out now. And that's that probably frustrated me too.
Let's just say that Sheldon Keefe did not say the same at the same level of what Brindamore said, but he said pretty close to that. And if you look at what they did against Florida, they lost 3-2, 3-2, 3-2, and 4-2, and they won 2-1. So that was a pretty close series too.
Who would you rather have talking at the podium?
Oh, Brindamore every day, including Sunday.
That's my point. I'm only talking about, guys that are willing to open up a little bit and explain how they feel about things. And that's my issue. I don't actually disagree with what Russ said about looking in the mirror, but I don't think this had anything to do with that.
Okay.
I think this was just.
That's all. That's the only thing I could tell you. That was my reasoning.
Yeah, your criticism did not read like that. The capitalization of your thing. I mean, it basically just read like, hey, look, it was a sweep. That's how it came across, which I think is, which is true, but it doesn't give him any credit for trying to sort of explain how he was feeling at that time, which was, hey, the team, it was close, it was tight, all the games were won. If we could have won one, could have been different. Although, also what's not brought up is that he was very laudatory of the Panthers' performance in that. He basically said the better team won. They did. So he was trying to just sort of explain in his mind that, that series was quote. I mean, anybody who watched that series knows it was tight. So, yeah. But they do have, they've got to get a little more scoring. There's no doubt. So, and pass ready.
Even though Anderson wasn't the reason they lost, they do have to figure out the goaltending because sometimes, Anderson, I don't think Anderson's the guy that ever will win a Stanley Cup. Like, I feel confident in saying that.
But he wasn't the reason. He was not the reason.
No, yeah. But I'm getting to the point where you have to look at it and say, do you believe, well, they won't have to because he's a free agent, but do you believe Frederik Andersen can win you a Stanley Cup? And I don't think he can.
Yeah, but Adrian Hill can.
You're on record as saying they've already solved their goaltending problems.
Yeah, I think, but they won't play him.
Well, I think they've committed to him. I mean, he's their guy now.
But he could have gotten used in this. Like, why didn't he get used in this series at all?
Because you had two more experienced goaltenders.
Yeah, and Anderson.
So
Anderson was fun.
Cam Ward wasn't experienced at all, and he's the guy that won. Sometimes that happens, Mike.
Well, sometimes. Most of the time.
But Anderson wasn't bad.
No, but that's not the point. The point is, yes, I understand going with experience, but sometimes it's that other guy that's actually going to win it for you. You don't know until you try it.
That's an unknown.
Try it, and
they don't.
That's an unknown.
Yeah, that is an unknown. You don't know whether.
One thing I know is they got swept, so that didn't work either.
Yeah. Better point at the scoreboard a couple more times.
I'm just pointing out the facts.
No, well, yeah, that is my point that I've been trying to make. It's not always when we're writing, it isn't always about the facts. We want to sort of explain everything. So, there is no. I'll tell you one thing you're absolutely right about. We are a result-oriented business. The facts are they got swept.
Right.
And I think, believe it or not, I think Rod Brindamore understood that. But I do think he was trying to say, hey, this series, there was something about it, and there was something about it, and. For us to criticize him for dare saying that when, I'm pretty sure he's clear that they lost all 4 games. And I'm pretty sure he said, that the Panthers deserve to win. So we ought to try to give the guy some credit. And if he didn't say it quite the way that you wanted him to, we should give him a little bit of a benefit of the doubt instead of ripping the guy saying, look at the scoreboard. Do you know what you're talking about? Well, I think he does.
I'll give Rod a call. I'll straighten it up.
So,
in our daily Toronto Maple Leafs update, Kev, the news that came out yesterday has thrown things a little bit for a loop. I mean, okay, currently Kyle Dubas is in the mix, maybe the leading candidate in Pittsburgh for their GM job. They seem to have put everything on hold with, names like Eric Tulsky and McKinnon and other candidates. And once Dubas became available, he seemed to be the guy that they focused in on, but there's no clear picture of whether he's going to take the job. But the interesting thing that came out from Frank Cervalli yesterday was that the NHLPA is looking into Dubas and a conflict between him or the Orr Wasserman group. He was represented by, and it turns out to be, it was a family friend who was an agent, or not a certified agent, but an agent for some golf players, who was a member of the Orr Wasserman agency. And obviously Austin Matthews, Sam Lafferty, a couple other players in the Leaf organization are represented by Orr Wasserman, and that is a conflict. You can't, apparently there are rules in terms of so the certified agents cannot represent both management and players. But the thing here is this Armstrong, who was Dubas's representative negotiating with MLS&E, was not a certified agent. So that might be the loophole that clears him. But right now there seems to be some look into this by the PA on Kyle Dubas. And I don't know if whether there are any ramifications to the Leafs, because no contracts were signed, nothing was finalized. So I don't believe they're in the mix.
Yeah, the penalties for this are with the agents. Like it's not on Dubas. Dubas can get who he wants to represent him. It's on the agents. Like, if they want to be certified, can't they go to Wasserman and say, what are you doing letting one of your employees when you're a certified agent? I think you can. So, the penalties here, don't impact, Dubas. They will impact, the agents, because that's I remember when this came out, because it was a really big deal, because there were agents who had both coaches and players, and they finally just put the rule and said, if we're going to certify you, you can't represent.
Well, it makes sense from a labor perspective. Yeah, you shouldn't be doing that.
Yeah, for sure it does.
And obviously the source, and we don't know exactly the source from the story of the Cervalli story, but the way I read it, and essentially it sounded like it was other agents who had the problem with it. And of course, it's a cutthroat business, and they're in competition with Orr Wasserman. So if they get any dirt on them, they're gonna put it out there. That just only makes sense.
What the story is, it takes you a minute or two to really digest it and figure out, like Kevin said, just what's what. And unfortunately, Dubas's name gets dragged in the mud in it.
Yes,
and that's unfortunate.
Yeah.
Now we don't know where things stand with with Pittsburgh. There's talk that they're extremely interested in Dubas, but there hasn't been any decision on his part. Somebody in the chat, and I had heard this going back a couple weeks, that Dubas is linked to one of the Ottawa Senator groups, one of the ownership groups. And I wanted to touch on this and ask you about this, Kev. Boy, has this been a long process. I get that they want, in the wake of Boots Del Biagio and some of the other bad ownership groups with Arizona and other teams, I understand that the NHL has to do their due diligence when it comes to ownership groups. They don't want to get egg on their face, but apparently one of the groups, the Nico Sparks group that is interested in buying the Senators, their financing is a little bit in question. And a lot of the things that have been coming out is that the NHL loves to go with people that they know already, like the Ann Lauer group, who owns 10% of the Canadians, or the Kimmel group, who owns part of the Penguins. So, it just seems like it's been a long, really drawn out process.
Yeah. Oh, it has. And, and they're going to come out smelling like a rose on this, because the prices people are talking about are way above where you would have guessed that a team like the Senators would have gone for.
I think that's what the issue is, Kev. I think they're just trying to get the highest price for the family.
Well, I read something really interesting too, and I don't know the ramifications of this, because the league would also have to approve it. So maybe this is wrong, but someone said, ultimately the two daughters decide who they sell it to. Like,
right.
They can accept all the guidance they want, but the daughters can decide to sell it who they want. Now, that's a little bit misleading, because the league would have to approve whoever's, like, they couldn't sell it to their neighbors or anything. But it is interesting that they the suggestion is that they're still involved in this, that they've they get some sort of say in it also.
But I wish we knew more about was the plan for the next arena with each group, because I'm sure that that's a key point, because they're not staying where they are for much longer.
Well, no, that was
and they need to get it approved.
That was one of the reasons why the group that Ryan Reynolds was involved with dropped out, because they couldn't get guarantees regarding LeBreton Flats or this downtown Ottawa. And once they found that out, they said, okay, we're not going to buy a team for $1 billion and then keep them in Canada, and that's just asinine. So
I'm telling you, I looked at a spot. Take the spot where the Ottawa Lynx used to play. It's a big baseball area, like a field, whatever. Knock all that down, build it there.
Yeah, I have a spot. It's called the Videodrome. Oh, never mind. Okay, so, Kev, the one thing, it just seems like everything in terms of the coaching carousel is on hold right now. I mean, we have Anaheim, we have the Rangers, we have Washington. There's the Nashville situation where Barry Trotz hasn't decided whether he's going to bring back Hines or not. A lot of these, and it's interesting because we've heard all of a sudden Peter Laviolette's name is all over the place. Mike Babcock is getting interviewed in Columbus with the Rangers. I mean, nothing, and no domino has fallen yet, which is a little strange because we're in the last week of May, and usually it's not imperative that you have the coach in place before the draft, but you like to have the coach in place before the draft.
Yeah, I mean, at least the general manager should be in place. That's why, I don't know that the coach is that big a deal at the draft, but certainly the GM, would be nice to have him in. Although, usually what ends up happening is that general manager just follows the scouting that's already been done, and then he basically cleans house with the scouting department after it's done. But, I don't know. The coaching situation seems unusual because, I mean, are there assistant coaches on the 3 teams left that require a wait and see? I don't know. But I wonder why all of a sudden we're recycling again, too. It looked like we were sort of moving away.
Yeah, there's a lot of recycling. And then Drager reported on the 19th that Gary Bettman is going to meet with Quenneville when the season ends. So if somebody's waiting on Quenneville, they're going to keep waiting. So that's a thing. And then,
and Sheldon Keefe in Toronto too, Russ, because right now he's under contract and they don't know whether he's coming back or not, and you have to wait for the Toronto GM search.
But there is always a point where teams stop waiting, though.
Sure,
like, there is a point where they just have this drop dead date in their head, and they're like, "All right, look, we've been waiting long enough. We're going to have to move on." The thing was, I was surprised about Laviolette with the Rangers because I just don't think that's the right fit. I just feel like I've watched Laviolette the last few teams, and I don't see it anymore out of them. And I don't know why. Because, again, if they're getting him for a season and a half, like every other team has pretty much had him. And it doesn't make sense to keep doing that when you have young talent that you're hoping to get over the top to also mesh with your older talent so that this isn't just the only window you have the next 2-3 years. You want to have a larger window than that. But if you bring in a Laviolette, he might make one of your young players better, like Gallant made one of the Rangers' young players better, but he's not going to make the majority of them better. And that's why I don't think they should go for him.
Plus, his shelf life is a little bit
good.
It's and usually it kind of, Gallant has a shelf life problem wherever he's been.
Right.
And so you want to bring another guy who also has a reputation for, wearing out his welcome, particularly with general managers. I don't know. I mean, Chris Drury, I would assume, knows him pretty well. But so I don't know. Maybe he feels comfortable with them. So, but the same thing with Babcock. Like, you got to have a strong management team. That
would make sense with Columbus with Yarmo.
With Yarmo and Davidson.
Yes.
From what I know, Kev, that Babcock did meet with the Rangers, and I don't think that's the right fit there either, because I think after a while, if things were starting to not go great, that Babcock in that market would get a little defensive. And I don't think that that's what you want. And I think, because again, we don't know if he's going to walk in and he's going to have all the Mike Babcock stuff going the right way the minute he walks in there. The Rangers have issues that don't necessarily favor a Babcock team. They're not strong defensively. You might have to make some changes there. Like, there's things that are going to happen if you bring in Babcock compared to maybe another coach. So that's the other thing that I think may not line up for them.
Last thing here, Kev. The Leafs GM search sounds like they want to get something done pretty quickly. They're interviewing a number of, and again, you're talking about rehashing retreads. Brad Treliving, who just walked away from Calgary. Frank Seravalli is reporting that they're going to talk to Botterill, they're going to talk to Bergevin, they're going to talk to Peter Chiarelli. I know that'll go over really well in Toronto. There has been mention of Stan Bowman, but I can't see that really happening. The two names that sort of intrigue me. I mean, I don't have anything against Treliving. I just, the way things ended in Calgary was a little interesting.
I think he's actually very good. But I think he made some mistakes in the last go around. Right. So.
But the two names that intrigue me, even though they don't match, the experience quotient that supposedly Shanahan is looking for. One is Detroit-based, and that's Chris Draper, who is Yzerman's assistant GM. And the other is Scott Mellenby, who is assistant to Doug Armstrong in St. Louis, longtime assistant in Montreal. Apparently he was near the top or one of the leading candidates for the Flyers team president job, but he lost out to Keith Jones. They don't have GM experience, but I think they're pretty smart hockey guys. If they went down that road, I would think that would be a good choice.
Yeah, I mean, Draper really hasn't been doing it all that long, and he hasn't really had a management position. He's not even assistant GM. He's a director of scouting. That doesn't mean that, he wouldn't do a good job. But, one thing you can say about Yzerman, when he put his mind to the idea he was going to go into management, he said, look, I want to learn everything I can. So he did all the different jobs. Like he went out and scouted, he did contracts. And then when he was ready, he went out and took the Tampa job. And, Draper has been pretty much in the talent side of it. So, when Yzerman named an assistant GM to replace Ryan Martin, he didn't take Draper. He took Horkoff. So, I don't know what that means. But, I think you're right on. He's a good hockey guy and a great personality. I mean, first rate guy.
Here's the problem with the Leafs, though, Kev. There's some uncertainty within the organization of Dubas people that he hired. How many of them will stay? We saw Spezza left right away. We'll find that out July 1st. They have roster issues. They've got a lot of issues, and Brendan Shanahan's kind of doing this slow. And I don't know if he could afford to do it slow this time, because when a GM takes on this job, he may have a lot more to do than a lot of other GMs in a short amount of time, a very compact amount of time. And that's the other thing. That's why, you have someone like Jason Botterill out there who's certainly a smart guy and knows what he's doing. At some point, I don't think they can continue to wait. I just don't. I almost don't understand why Brendan Shanahan's taking the long way around the block on this one, because I just feel like, you know what, there's some instability right now there in the front office of the Leafs that needs to get corrected, and Russ, they want to do it.
I can tell you why, because if he makes a mistake on this one, he's done.
Listen, I don't think he's done a great job.
He's got to make the right choice to replace Dubas. Otherwise, his job as team president is shot.
Yeah, I know. I don't think he's done a great job anyhow as far as the support. I think he was lucky that he had a guy like Dubas that was a real go-getter until this year, when we heard that all of a sudden Shanahan was stopping some of Dubas's moves, and we don't know what that would have done. But I just feel like even Shanahan now has reached a crossroads in this job. I do. I don't know how Kevin feels about it, but it feels that way.
Well, I mean, historically, you would say yes. The only caution I would have on that is Shanahan is very good in managing up. His personality, always I bet he's really in tight with ownership just because of his personality, and and that's part of it in this business. You got to manage up as well as down. And I would bet he's probably even better managing up than he is managing down. So he might be still in very good with ownership, and but I don't disagree. If you looked at it from the outside looking in, like we are, you're going to go, well, they haven't won, and that's the mandate. you know, so, would you be vulnerable? It sure seems like you would be.
Well, ironically, and I'll just finish off on this, and I'm writing about this right now. Ironically, Chris Johnston is reporting that Shanahan, after he let go of Dubas, called the core 4 group and told them that they were safe, which honestly, yeah, that exactly
makes no sense.
I know. The only thing I can say is if you call them and tell them we're going to trade one of you, then you immediately put yourself in a vulnerable position in terms of decreasing the value of the player. If you tell them that they're safe, you tell them that everything's going to be fine, then you're still operating from a place of you're in control. But I mean, I'm sorry if they go ahead, they bring in a new, or they're going to make the new general manager the heavy, and he's going to be the one that goes out and says, okay, we're going to trade one of these guys. And Shanahan is trying to be the glad hand.
No, I don't think he's going to do that because you're setting that guy up. But here's what bugs me about this, Kev. There is a little bit to say that there should be some uncertainty when, the season ended the way it did and you're going into the summer. Yes, you could be happy you made it into the playoffs, but these guys shouldn't feel 100% safe in their jobs. It's not going to make them better at their jobs that Brendan Shanahan called them and said, don't worry, you guys are safe. That's not going to make them better going into next year. Maybe a little uncertainty is good because, again, they have to get over the hump too. And I don't know why he would do that.
Well, and uncertainty is built into the business. Like, no matter what Shanahan says, I mean, they're still vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
So I think they all understand that. But yeah, I don't know, what to make of that. Like, it's not something like, just compare that to, could you imagine Steve Yzerman doing that? Or
never. He wouldn't.
Not 100 million years.
He was safe for the next year, right? Like
no, he that's just not something that he would do or how he would operate. I'm surprised at that. In fact, to be honest with you, I don't think many general managers would tell a player, 4 players, they were safe, especially given the circumstances and kind of the variables that are in play here.
Right. All right. Great job, guys.
Mike, you're safe in your job here, though. I want to let you know that.
Who, me?
You're safe.
Yeah.
Thanks very much. I didn't know you were like the omnipotent power that was controlling everything. But anyway,
I just wanted you to hear it. That's all.
Thank you. I appreciate that. We will not be doing a show. See, I have all the power. We will not be doing a show on Monday because of Memorial Day. So we will be back on Tuesday with the next edition of the Hockey Buzzcast, and maybe we'll have. We should have actually the Stanley Cup Finals locked in. But hey, I think by Tuesday it would be going to Game 7 if it was. So hey, you never know. But anyway, for Kevin Allen, for Russ Cohen, I'm Mike Agello. Thank you for watching, and remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey.